Jonathan Upchurch is a former 6-year Grand Canyon resident and 5-time presenter at previous History Symposia. As a volunteer in the park, Jonathan gave 50 evening programs on Grand Canyon history. A civil engineer, he authored the nomination of the Kaibab Trail Suspension Bridge to become a National Historical Civic Engineering Landmark, and the bridge was dedicated as a landmark during the 2019 History Symposium. An avid Grand Canyon hiker, he has hiked over 2,400 miles in the park. Jonathan met and hiked with Harvey Butchart in the Grand Canyon in 1967. His paper is A Man Who Made a Difference, Dr. Harvey Butchart. Jonathan?
Good morning. Hey, thank you, Gary. Thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to be presenting my 6th presentation at a Grand Canyon History Symposium. The theme of this year's symposium is people who have made a difference. So in the spirit of that theme, I'm sharing with you today a presentation about Dr. Harvey Butchart, a man who did make a difference in many, many ways. He was the first recipient of this society's Pioneer Award in 1997, recognized for how he made a difference for the Grand Canyon and people who visit here and enjoy our backcountry. This is a firsthand account because in 1967, I had the opportunity to spend 39 days with Harvey Butchart, either in the classroom or a couple times hiking in the Grand Canyon. So that's the story that I'll be sharing with you today. Now, I got a few questions for all of you out there. And the first question is, I know there's a few people here who actually met Harvey Butchart. Raise your hand if you ever met Harvey Butchart. Raise your hand if you ever used one of his books, The Grand Canyon Treks, as a resource. Or raise your hand if you ever referred to his hiking logs as a resource, perhaps for helping to explore the canyon. If you raised your hand, you are some of the people to whom Harvey Butchart has made a difference because he has helped you explore and enjoy the Grand Canyon. Having been to 4 previous symposiums, I've made 2 observations. And the first observation is, if you look at all the presentations that have occurred over time, we don't have very many presentations that go after the mid-20th century. Most presentations deal with stuff before 1950. So I'm going to try to break the mold a little bit today and offer something that happened a little bit later in terms of events or people. And I guess I'm as guilty as any of the other presenters, because you look at my last 5 presentations, the dates that were covered are all in yellow up there, and they're all early 20th century. So I'm going to break from that mold today. But that observation, I guess, leads to a question that's often asked, and that is, when do events or lives really become history? And maybe one of the possible answers is, it's history if it happened before anyone in the room was born. Now, don't fear, I'm not going to ask who the oldest person in the room is today to find the answer to that question. My other observation, second observation from past symposia, is, most presentations are based on archival research, going to the library, newspaper sources, family history, not very many firsthand accounts. Now, Susie Verkamp has spoken on Life on the Rim. We've had a handful of others that have been firsthand accounts, but again, not very many. And again, I'm sort of going to break the norm here today and give you a firsthand account of something historical. I do want to acknowledge Tom Myers and Elias Butler. They prepared this wonderful biography of Harvey Butchart, one of my favorite books because I learned from it a lot of things that I did not know about Harvey. I really recommend it if you'd like to know more about Harvey Butchart. But that publication does do a great job of explaining Harvey Butchart's influence, how he made a difference through this 3-volume set of Grand Canyon treks that were sort of a synopsis of his exploration of the canyon, through his hiking logs, through his map where he showed all the places that he explored in the canyon. So the story today that I have to share with you about Harvey, the time was June of 1967. The place was Flagstaff, Arizona, and the occasion was a National Science Foundation Summer Math Institute that brought 30 high school seniors from around the United States to NAU for a 5-week math institute. And it turned out one of the professors to teach us would be Dr. Harvey Butchart. Well, on the evening of June 11th, a Sunday in 1967, these 30 high school students assembled in the lobby of this dormitory building on the NAU campus. It was a get acquainted session. The guys meet the girls and girls meet the guys and get to know everyone else and where they're from. But standing off to the side in the corner of the room was this guy who looked really, really old. He was dressed in his Sunday best, his suit, his tie, his white shirt, and he wore these wire-rimmed glasses that looked like they were my grandmother's from the 1930s. And I began to hear a little bit of snickering from other students when it finally dawned on them, oh my God, this old guy is maybe one of our instructors for the next 5 weeks. It's going to be a long 5 weeks. But we soon changed our opinion of Harvey Butchart. The next day, the other professor told us about Harvey, his exploits in the canyon, his first ascents, having discovered Royal Arch, and on and on and on. We learned that at noontime, Harvey would pick up his briefcase, he would walk home for lunch, walk back about 2.5 miles, returning at 1 o'clock. One of the ways he got exercise and kept in shape. And we learned that Harvey could stand in the front of the blackboard with a piece of chalk in both hands, and he could simultaneously draw 2 absolutely perfect circles on the blackboard. Well, our acquaintance with Harvey, we began to learn more about him as a hiker. On the second Saturday of this 5-week event, there was to be a rather ambitious day hike. It was going to be rim to river to rim. But on the first Saturday, Harvey wanted people to be able to qualify to go on the hike. So the 2 things you had to do to qualify were, on the east side of Flagstaff, 2,400 feet elevation gain, Mount Eldon, you had to be able to hike up to the top of that in 75 minutes. And the second challenge was you had to be able to hike to the top of Sunset Crater in 25 minutes. Now, as we were walking up Mount Eldon, I had a lot of hiking experience. I was a Boy Scout. I'd already hiked over 1,200 miles, mostly in the flatlands of the Midwest. I wanted to impress Harvey. I tried to strike up a conversation with him. And to show my hiking sophistication, I said, well, you know, when I go hiking to prevent blisters, I wear 2 pairs of socks. And Harvey's reply was, when I go hiking, I wear 3 pairs of socks. So much for my attempt to impress Harvey Butchart. So the second Saturday came along, 6 o'clock in the morning, get breakfast at the dining hall, pick up your sack lunch, jump into cars, drive up to the South Rim, hike down the South Kaibab Trail, eat your lunch at Phantom Ranch and maybe swim in the swimming pool, hike out of the canyon. Harvey is serving his sweep to make sure everyone got out. Pile back in the cars and get back to the dining hall before 6:15 so you could have dinner. That says everything about Harvey Butchart, his approach to the canyon and the pace at which he approached the canyon. So there's another little hiking story here. On the second Monday, we all got to the classroom at 8 o'clock in the morning, and Gary Donaldson was sitting there looking very tired, and Gary's face was red as a beet. And we said, well, what happened to you? Well, Gary had the opportunity to hike with Harvey Butchart on that weekend. You remember there were these 2 qualifying hikes on Saturday. They went up to the canyon. They didn't start down the Tanner Trail until late on Saturday. They camped somewhere near the Red Wall. Sunday morning, they hiked down to the river, then downstream to Unkar Rapids, then cross country to somewhere back up on the Tanner Trail and out of the canyon. Gary had forgotten his hat. That's why his face was red as a beet. This hike for Gary was absolutely exhausting, but he did say that Harvey, while hiking up the trail with the pack on his back, was whistling a tune. Well, I was a bit jealous that Gary had had a chance to go on a hike with Harvey Butchart. I eventually worked up the courage to ask Harvey, is there possibly any chance I might be able to go on a hike with you to the canyon? And we arranged that. After the 5 weeks was up, I was able to take a hike with Harvey. It was a hike to Clear Creek. He had a couple of very specific objectives in mind, but look at the screen. 50 hours on the clock, covering about 42 miles. And I'll tell you more about this hike here as we move along. Harvey had 2 objectives. He had talked to a national park ranger by the name of Jim Bailey, who had flown over the Clear Creek drainage, looked down, and thought that maybe he had seen a natural bridge on a tributary to Clear Creek. Well, this really caught Harvey's attention because Barry Goldwater had discovered Coal Bridge from the air in 1951 and then later hiked to it. Harvey was the first person to actually walk to Hartman Natural Bridge and photograph it in 1958. And Harvey had discovered Royal Arch in 1959 and actually had gotten quite a bit of publicity when he made known to the world that Royal Arch existed. So Harvey was eager for another find that he might check off, so to speak. So that was one of his objectives. A second objective is that he wanted to explore the possibility of a new route in between Angel's Gate and the Howlands Butte. And there's a little notch in the red wall here. We'll see more about that later. I remember the hike with Harvey really well, but it was a real sense of deja vu 39 years later, because my wife Betty and I had just moved to the Grand Canyon. She came home from work one day. She came here to be the park librarian. She said, I was looking through the rare book collection today, and I found a set of Harvey Butchart's hiking logs. And I thought, wow. I knew that Harvey Butchart had kept hiking logs, but I didn't know what had happened to them. I said, wow, I got to look at this. I wonder if he's got an entry for July of 1967. So it wasn't long until I was in the rare book room with white gloves on my hands, looking at his trail notes. And sure enough, here's a 2-page single-space entry for this hike that I took with Harvey Butchart. So more about his hiking logs and what they reveal about that hike a little bit later. So our hike, uneventful, down to Phantom Ranch on the South Kaibab Trail, then going across the Tonto on the Clear Creek Trail, past the temples over towards Clear Creek, passing below the buttes named after members of Major Powell's expedition, coming to the gorge of Clear Creek, just as deep as the Inner Gorge or the Bright Angel Gorge over at Phantom, and then down and down and down some more until you finally get into the Clear Creek drainage. And I think we walked a short distance upstream before we camped somewhere near this archaeological site. The next morning, we hiked a bit further up Clear Creek. You'll remember Harvey's looking for this natural bridge. It's in a tributary a little bit opposite of Shayava Falls. Shayava Falls flows at some times of year. Certainly wasn't flowing in July of 1967, but does flow sometimes in the spring. And if you look at Harvey's hiking map, you have the Clear Creek drainage. Shayava Falls is up here. Here's the tributary to be explored. Well, Harvey and I started up that tributary drainage, and it got steeper. And then there were places where it had some exposure, and that wasn't very comfortable for a flatlander from Illinois. So I said to Harvey, why don't you go ahead? And by agreement, I went back to our campsite, and he proceeded, and eventually we rendezvoused back in camp. Well, he did get up at least midway through the red wall, is my understanding. He did not find a natural bridge, which I suppose was disappointing to him. He figured that it was probably a big rock or something that had fallen over the gully somewhere, and when viewed from the air, it looked like it might be a natural bridge, and that's what Jim Bailey saw. So, Harvey's other goal on this was to check out this possible route, the notch in between Angel's Gate and the Howlands Butte. So from 20,000 feet, if you're looking east, there's Cape Royal, Wotan's Throne, Angel's Gate, the Howlands Butte, and a little break in the red wall right there. Or zooming in, Harvey had previously walked around here on the Tonto, a very circuitous route. He was hoping he could find a shortcut. And if you were to look at this from the south rim, here's the Angel's Gate, the Howlands Butte, and there's the notch, zooming in to look at it a little bit closer. Well, we walked a ways downstream along Clear Creek to a point where you might start to go up to this notch. You remember it was July. It was the middle of the day now. It was really hot. And I looked up there, and it looked like it was up and up and up. And it was really hot out. And I said to Harvey, you know, I think I'll wait here in the shade while you go check this out. So, wearing the bandana around his head and his 2-quart canteen slung over his shoulder, he set out to explore, and he did find that there was a route up there. It was passable. His hiking log says that you might save 50 or 60% of the time that it would take to hike around the Howlands Butte on the Tonto. Well, now we had to figure out, after he got back, he looked a bit tired, maybe a little bit hot, but he did find that route, the shortcut through the notch, as opposed to going round and round. But his hiking log that I read 39 years later did say, as I was climbing up the gulch towards the notch and then to the tunnel level in the red wall, the heat got to me. Well, we now had to figure out our plan for getting out of the canyon. We decided we'd wait till the sun was low in the sky so the trail would be in the shade. We decided we'd hike along the Tonto as far as we could that evening and then camp. So we did that, spread out our bedrolls when it got dark, laid down. After about 15 minutes, there were ants crawling on me. Well, I didn't want to say anything. Harvey might think I was a wimp. So, in a little bit, Harvey said, "There's ants." So we hiked in the moonlight all the way to Phantom Ranch, arriving there about 1:30 in the morning. Harvey's hiking log says at the end of the trip, I made the walk to the rim in a much shorter time than I did at the end of May, but Upchurch was still faster. And he did tell me at the time, if anyone ever asks, I'll tell them you got a really strong pair of legs. But much to my chagrin, 39 years later, I read another passage in his journal which said 16-year-old Upchurch hadn't succumbed to the spell of the canyon. When we got back to Flagstaff, Harvey unrolled his maps, showed me all the places he has been, a complete spider web. It was just absolutely amazing. Well, it was a real privilege to know Harvey Butchart. It was a real privilege to hike with him. It's been an honor to share this story with you. He was truly a man who made a difference. Thank you.